Welcome to another episode of Your Big Career Move. I'm Yesim Nicholson, and today I'm in the hot seat. Normally, I'm the one doing the interviewing, and well, you may have heard that I'm about to launch my first book, depending on when you're listening to this. It might already be out. And my wonderful friend Lizzie very kindly offered to grill me about the book. So the tables have turned, and I will be on the receiving end of the questions today. Thanks so much, Lizzie, for doing this. Really
Uh,
appreciate it, I think.
you are very welcome. I'm really happy to be doing this. You and I go back a long way, right? We've been friends a long time, and I'm just so in awe of you doing this. And it looks like it's going to be such a great book. So I can't wait to talk to you about it.
Thank you. Where do we start?
Well, I think where we start is sort of at the beginning and sort of set the scene a little bit for people. So I thought, Yeshan, just to start with, maybe you could tell us a bit more about yourself, how you came to writing a book called Ready to Quit Your Job.
Yeah. This is a really good question because I didn't think that I would ever write a book. If you'd said to me 2 years ago, you're going to write a book, I don't think I even would have really known what it would have been about. But then just over a year ago, probably about 18 months ago, I just started writing, and I didn't think it would go anywhere, really honestly. And I would just, whenever I had a bit of free time, I would just write a few notes, and I'd be listening to a podcast interview, or I'd be hosting a podcast, and I'd be like, oh, there's some real nuggets of information in there. And I just started taking notes of them all. And probably summer last year was when I suddenly realized I think actually there is a book here. And a friend of mine was also writing a book. So we said, okay, let's hold each other accountable and let's do this. And before I knew it, this book was forming, and I got to a point of no return where I thought, well, I've got so close, I might as well carry on. And actually, I really loved the process, and I really, really hope that people enjoy reading it as much as I enjoyed writing it.
Well, on that note, who is this book for?
Yeah, so you and I have both got to an age where we have lots of friends who are middle-aged like us. And
Don't know what you're talking about.
well, me more than you. You're obviously still in your 20s. Um, and probably like you, I've started to have conversations with friends where they've been in similar jobs for the last 20 years or so. They've gone down a certain career path. And middle age is a cliche for a reason. We do go through a bit of a crisis, some of us, and sometimes it's not a full-blown crisis, but it's just, I think we take time to reflect a little bit once we've been through the whole, and obviously this is not the case for everybody, but for a huge majority of us, we meet our life partners, we get married, we have kids, we carry on with our careers, and then we get to midlife and we go, hang on, do I want the next 20 years to look like the last 20 years? And for some people, the answer is yes. For a lot of people, it's a big question mark. And I could see a lot of my friends were sort of grappling with this sort of internal battle of, is this what I want to continue to do until the day I die or retire, whichever comes first? Or is it time to make a change? And I think for a lot of people, change is really, really daunting. So that's really what this book is for, is to help people to make a really well-informed, thought through, thoughtful decision rather than a knee-jerk reaction to a bad day in the office, which we all have.
Absolutely. And that decision may not be to quit, but there are other things that people may decide to do. And in fact, in your book, you explore sort of four outcomes that typically somebody might get to who are questioning their current position. And I wondered if you could tell us a bit more about those four sorts of outcomes that people follow.
Yeah, definitely. I think when I started coaching people through this process of making a career change, I possibly slightly naively expected everybody would make a change. And what became apparent over time, and the more people I worked with, the more I realized that actually there are four possible outcomes. And the first one is that people don't make a career change at all. All they do is make a change to their mindset. They sort of look at where they are and they realize, oh, actually, I do quite like the company I work for. My values do align with the company. I really love my colleagues. They're like friends. And I do get invited to work on interesting projects and so on. but actually just taking that step out of it and coming at it with fresh eyes and a fresh perspective sometimes just makes people appreciate what they've got a bit more. And sometimes people have got things going on outside of work that are affecting how they feel about work and how they're turning up to work. So actually making changes outside of work then makes people feel a little bit more positive towards the work they're doing. So that's what I call the Remainer. So that the four possible outcomes are Remainer, which is absolutely nothing to do with Brexit, you'll be pleased to know. Then you've got the Tweaker, the Toe Dipper, and the Leaper. And so we've talked about the Remainer. The Tweaker is somebody that when they take the time to reflect on what they're doing, they go, well, actually, I like all these elements of what I'm doing currently, but if I could just work from home an extra day a week, or go into the office an extra day a week, or have a little side project within my organization that I work on, or take on less responsibility or slightly more responsibility, or basically just making small tweaks to your current role that make it much more enjoyable, more fulfilling, more in line with where you want to be. So that's your Tweaker. And then you've got the Toe Dipper. So the Toe Dipper is somebody that goes, I'm okay where I am right now. I know that in the long term, however, I don't want to be here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put things in place that are going to help me to exit in a really strategic, calculated way. So I'm not just taking a massive leap of faith. I'm going to put things in place. So that might be starting a little side hustle. So maybe evenings, weekends, set up some kind of business that you find interesting. It doesn't have to be business. It can just be some kind of passion project. It can be, I don't know, if you love reading business books, for example, it could be just getting a group of people together on a monthly basis to talk about business books. So, it's not a book club, but it's about business books. That's just an example, but it's just something that you do outside of work that gets your creative juices flowing, that gets you excited and passionate about something, and gives you an idea of what life could look like when you take the step out of work. It could be volunteering, or it could just be going on extra courses or weekend workshops or whatever, just exploring what opportunities might be available to you outside, because it's really easy to get caught up in your little bubble of going to work 9 to 5 or whatever hours you do. And it feels like that is the extent of the universe. Your home life, your work life, and maybe a little bit of social here and there. But our worlds can shrink. And it's sometimes we just need a little reminder that there's stuff outside of work and our family life that is exciting to explore. And then the fourth and final option is the leaper. So that is somebody that takes time out, assesses everything, and goes, yeah, I sort of had a feeling that I really need to get out and do something completely different. And then they just go for it, as the name suggests. They take that leap of faith and they try something completely different.
It's interesting. So it's just listening to you and talking about that kind of midlife point of life. And I suppose things are different these days, perhaps from the generation before, because we are going to be working longer. A job doesn't have to be for life. People can chop and change. So it's feels like a really timely point for a book like this to come out. I'm interested in kind of what you've observed about people. I mean, you've talked about these four different outcomes, but just more generally, as you've been researching this topic and meeting people through what you do, what kind of observations have you made about people? Do they that might get them to this point? So do they follow their dreams and end up disillusioned? Do they fall into a particular career and wonder how they ended up there? Kind of what leads so many people to end up thinking about leaving, quitting, doing something different?
Yeah, it's such an interesting topic. I mean, it's such a beautiful insight into psychology, doing the research on this. And it's really varied, honestly speaking. I think a lot of people do end up going down a career path right from the beginning that is just not right for them. And that can happen for a variety of reasons. It can be because you were really good at maths, so then your maths teacher and your parents and whoever else said, oh, you're good at maths, you should do something to do with maths, go and be an accountant or whatever it might be. And we get influenced by all these different external things, like, and our parents obviously have a massive effect on what we end up doing for a living. Our peers, our environment, Even the books that we read when we were younger, the films that we watched, absolutely anything around us can influence small decisions, but also big decisions. But for a majority of us, we do end up going down this route. And I mean, most people don't know what they want to do for a living when they're younger. I was definitely one of them. I went and did a degree that I'm really proud that I did, but it was a degree that gave me lots of options once I graduated, because actually I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just wanted to keep my options open. And so I think a lot of people do fall into a career. Some people are pushed into a career by parents. And then we do end up going down this route. And very interestingly, I did quite a lot of research around education and the role that that plays. And it was really fascinating because for a lot of us, when we're in school, we don't have people really focused on the things that we're very good at, that we're naturally just really capable of doing very, very well. What tends to happen is that education focuses on, oh, Lizzie, you're not very good at maths. So I'm going to make you do the times table again and again and again. And I'm going to get you to learn Pythagoras or whatever it's called until you've got it. And because I'm forcing something down your throat that you don't enjoy, over time you lose the love of learning. So that everything to do with education is a bit like, oh, do I have to? Oh, exams, oh, essays, oh. And we sort of beat that love of learning out of kids unintentionally, obviously. And so over time, we sort of forget and we lose what we're naturally really interested in and what we're naturally really, really good at. And we follow our peers and, oh, well, my friend's doing classics A level, so maybe I'll just do that. And we don't follow what we're really meant to do. And that's often the case. And that's often the reason why we end up in jobs that we don't enjoy. And it takes
That's
a lot
so
of
interesting.
rediscovery,
Yeah.
a lot of rediscovery in midlife to go, well, who am I? I honestly, I've lost count of the number of people I've had conversations with that get to them, generally their mid-40s-ish, and go, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I do for fun. I've lost my mojo. I don't know what makes me tick. I don't know what makes me joyful. And that's really sad. Hopefully, this book is an opportunity for people to rediscover themselves and to find out what is it that just naturally excites me and gets my attention.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we could do a whole episode about what you've just been talking about and that disconnect, I guess, between education and then onwards education and career. But really, really interesting food for thought. Before we move into making that change, I wondered if you could just tell us a bit about what does stop people from changing or quitting their job if they're not happy.
Oh, so many things, Lizzie. The really obvious one is money. I think particularly for people who are doing well financially, we do end up on a bit of a treadmill where we get paid more and more, and so we buy more and more, and we buy bigger houses and bigger cars and go more expensive holidays, and we sort of unintentionally create a bit of a trap for ourselves that we then need to keep up that lifestyle, and then the next level, and then the next level, and the next level, and it's keeping up with the Joneses, but the Joneses keep moving as well, so you're never really keeping up with the Joneses. And I think somewhere along the line we lose track of what's actually important. And interestingly, when I speak to people who are in their 50s and 60s, with hindsight they go, I was chasing something that was unimportant, and what I didn't appreciate was what was in front of me was having dinner with my children and tucking them in at night and spending quality time with them before they buggered off to university or whatever. So I think we do lose track of what's important. So definitely money is a big thing, and I talk a lot about money in the book because it is such an important topic. And the other thing is that we don't love change. Most human beings don't love change. We like to know what's what. It's comforting to us, and our brains are wired to like things that we know are stable. Better the devil you know. I'll stick with what I've got, and I know that I'm safe here, because that's the brain's main job, is to keep us safe. So if you start thinking, oh, I'm going to do something where the outcome is not predictable, your brain starts going, oh, wouldn't do that. Wouldn't be doing that because you might be unsafe if you do that. And we're sort of, from childhood, we're sort of programmed by our parents are constantly, and we do this as parents now. Oh, don't do that. Don't touch that. Oh, don't run too fast. Don't jump. Don't this, don't that. And this is how we've survived several millennia, is by keeping ourselves safe.
Yes.
So it's really reprogramming our brains to go, I can make a change and I can still be safe.
Yes. Love it. Okay. Really, really good. So, on this subject of change, let's now move into how people might go about it. Okay. They know something's not right. What do they do?
Explore what's possible. I think, first of all, know that change is possible. Change can be amazing. Change can be exciting. Change can be good. And I think just first of all, adopting the mindset that change is okay and change isn't going to kill you is a really great place to start. And then just be curious and open-minded about what could be possible. I have a whole chapter on what's possible. And it's really then about exploring and getting out of our comfort zones a little bit, because we do get stuck in our little bubbles because it's a comfortable place to be. So even just little silly things like, if you drive to work the same route every day, change it up, do something crazy and go a different route, because it just starts creating new neurological pathways. And that's exciting. We do like slight changes where we still know we're quite safe. So it's just expanding our horizons slightly. And that's going to be, that safe zone is going to be different for everybody. So just go a little bit outside of your comfort zone, a little bit every single day, and see what's possible and explore and start talking to people who are perhaps leading the life that you would like to lead, whose life seems really exciting and interesting and vibrant to you. Spend time with them. I don't know, read their books, listen to their podcast, be inspired by what other people are doing, and see if it's possible for you.
You talk about rediscovering you in your book. What can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we were talking about just now, that we lose track of who we are somewhere along the way. We get caught up in, parenthood and our careers and all of that sort of stuff. And it is really just taking time out. And I do talk about taking time out, which, I definitely have had conversations with people where they're like, I haven't got 2 minutes to myself. Don't tell me to make time for myself, because it just doesn't exist. But the truth, as harsh as it is for people to hear sometimes, the truth is that we all have 24 hours in a day, and we all choose how to, unless you're really in an environment where you don't have a choice. But for a huge, huge majority of us, we choose how we spend our time. And you might say, well, it's not my choice to go to work. It's 100% your choice. If you wanted to, you could just stay in bed today. You could just stay at home. Yes, there might be consequences that you're not happy with, but it's still your choice. So it's really just about, what choices are you making?
Okay, so that's a really interesting, some food for thought about how you might start to explore, what other people are doing or what else is out there. And you talk in your book about some of the very practical things that someone might do. So you talk, for example, about mindfulness and manifestation, and these are things I'm sure that some people would think, well, that's not going to pay the bills, but probably very helpful in making these sorts of decisions. So can you just talk us a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, meditation's an interesting one, isn't it? Because 10 years ago, I think when people mentioned meditation, it was like if you mentioned being a vegan, people would roll their eyes at you and like, oh, hippie, airy fairy. And I think the more mainstream it's become, I think the more people are open to how meditation might benefit you. I definitely thought it was a little bit airy fairy, whatevs. I tried it probably 20 years ago for the first time, and I was like, I don't think this is for me. But I've really been practicing meditation quite religiously over the last 5, 10 years. And for me personally, I know that it makes a huge difference to my mindset, to my energy levels, to how I approach things, to how positive I am about things, to the clarity that I get around decisions that I need to make. And it just calms you down as a person, and allows you to really hear yourself, which sounds weird, but there's so much noise in the world. There's the TV and our phones, gosh, our phones, constant distraction. And we're not very good at just sitting still and listening to ourselves, listening to what's actually, who am I? What am I actually thinking? What are the thoughts that I have when I'm left on my own with no distractions? And actually, I think for a lot of people, that's really confronting. They don't want to be sitting with their own thoughts because their own thoughts are uncomfortable. But I think if you can break through that uncomfortable barrier and you do start to hear your own voice, you start to rediscover what do I actually think about this? What is my gut instinct telling me about this? And and so people have said, well, what's meditation got to do with, deciding whether to quit your job or not? And to me, it's got everything to do with it. I think if you are able to listen to the best version of yourself, the version that's not anxious, that's actually in a really calm, collected place. I don't know about you, but I think that any huge decision you want to make with a clear mind, with a calm mind, with a mind that is strong and not being distracted by 100 different things.
Yeah, very true. And I guess for some it might take another form. It's meditation for them might just be going for a walk and getting some fresh air, or while you're going for a run, or even in the shower. I hear so many people have this sort of clarity of mind
Yeah,
when they're taking a shower. So
yeah.
everyone gets it in the shower. So all right, so there's some practical things you can do, and if we sort of I feel like we're getting to the pointy end of this conversation now, Yesim, as we sort of worked our way through some of the topics in the book. And so we've got to a point where people have explored, they've thought about the art of the possible, they feel they have clarity.
Actually, with regards to meditation, you're right. So meditation doesn't work for some people, but I have to say it's a small minority of people. For most people, meditation can work really, really well, even if it's just taking 5 minutes a day to just be mindful of your breathing.
Yeah,
Really simple exercises that you can do.
yeah,
Um, but you're right, for some people that just doesn't work. And I do talk about mindful activities as well. And there's a really nice story in my book. One of the guys I interviewed for my podcast, he was in the same industry, I think for more than 20 years, really successful at what he did, had a great career. And then again, got to midlife and was like, don't know if I want to continue doing this. And he'd been dabbling with beekeeping as like a little side hobby, but as he himself said, he would literally be doing it if he had an hour at the weekend or whatever. It was something that he's just sort of fit in as and when he could. And when he quit his job not knowing what he was going to do, and I think for about 6 months or so, he was then spending a lot of times with his beehives. And it was literally while he was, because, he said you can't really think about anything else when you're attending to the bees,
yeah,
otherwise you're in trouble. So because of that, because he was so in the moment for such a huge chunk of time, while he was beekeeping one day, he was like, I really should see if I can do this for a living. And he now has the most magnificent business where he basically installs beehives within organizations. So like he's got universities, he's got hotels, he's got all sorts of actually very varied businesses that basically get him to come in, set up a load of beehives for them, and then he goes and checks on them every now and again. And he's just got this network of beehives across the southwest, and he's looking to expand. But it was literally, if he hadn't taken that time out and just spent time quietly by himself and the bees,
yeah.
he wouldn't have come up with that idea. So
That's lovely.
it's just taking that time.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a great story. Let's just talk on a bit about the importance of looking after yourself during this period, because it could be quite a stressful time, as you're sort of getting to the point where you might make a change. Um, we've talked about meditation and the importance of that and mindfulness. Tell us about sleep. I think we all know at some level that sleep is important. Probably most of us don't get enough. But at a point in your life like this is important, right? So give us your views on that.
Yeah, I would say it's even more important than important. I would say it's crucial. I think, especially those of us who've had kids, we all know those sleepless nights when your babies are babies and you don't get a full night's sleep. And the first few years, you're literally just living off caffeine, and any sleep you can get is a bonus. Um, and we also know that it's really difficult to make really good decisions if you haven't had a good night's sleep. And that can be small decisions like, what am I going to eat? You're more likely to go for the sugary, the salty, the fatty foods when you're sleep deprived over the nice crunchy salad. So it's the small decisions that we already falter on when we haven't had a good night's sleep. So imagine what that's doing to us if we're having to make a big decision. So I definitely advocate having really good sleep where possible. And that I talk about a few little hints and tips that you can do to get a good night's sleep in my book, because it is so important. I think it's really easy to make bad decisions when you're sleep deprived, because it affects every area of your life. If you're not sleeping well and you are grabbing the sugary, fatty food, then that's going to make you feel sluggish. Then that it's going to be really hard to turn up as the best version of yourself at work if you're feeling tired and sluggish and low on energy. So again, people go, well, what's sleep got to do with careers? It's got everything to do with it. If you can get yourself sleeping well, you're going to eat better, you're going to have more energy, you're going to be more resilient to the little stresses that we all experience in every job. And you're just going to have a much more positive attitude towards work and life in general. So it's really crucial.
Yeah, no, very well said. And what else is important during this time? You talk in your book a bit about having the right people around you. What's the bit about having that sort of support network?
Yeah. I mean, again, we probably don't consciously think about who we spend our time with. We just spend time with the people that we spend time with. And what I'm advocating is to just be a little bit more deliberate and conscious about who you spend time with, because there are some people in your life that definitely not deliberately, but might be zapping you of energy and might be making you feel negative about certain things. So, and then you've got the opposite. You've got people who you tell them that you've had this idea and they're like, that sounds amazing. And they're like, immediately want the best for you. And they're looking at how they can support you. And like when I told you that, I was like, oh, I've written this book. And you immediately went, let's do a podcast interview. So I think having people around you like that want the best for you, that want to support you, that want to help in any way that they can, is so important. It's so much easier to do everything in life
Yeah,
when you're surrounding yourself with people like that. And we all have people who, again, not intentionally, but they do bring us down because they've always got issues that they need to download on you, and you come away feeling a ton heavier. Or you'll tell them a positive thing and they'll always find the negative in it. And you come away from the conversation feeling deflated, and you've lost your spark and your energy. Sometimes we have people like that in our lives that we can't avoid. It's a mom, a dad, a brother, a partner, whatever. And I'm not saying avoid those people completely. I'm just saying maybe just be a bit more deliberate about how much time you spend with them. Be a bit more
yeah,
conscious of it.
yeah. I love the fact you refer to these people in your book as dream squishers.
Yes. Yes, we all have people like that in our lives, but some people are just designed to see the negative in things. That just seems to be how they operate.
Yeah,
And what I've found is that the people who are able to make a really successful, happy career pivot are the ones that have partners, life partners, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, who are really supportive of their change. If you have a life partner who is less on board with you making a change for whatever reason, that's much more difficult, and you're much more likely to stay in a job that's making you unhappy if you have somebody that's not happy for you to make a change.
yeah,
So I do dedicate quite a lot of time in my book to how to deal. I call them your chief dream squisher, CDS for short. And we all have one of those in our lives probably, and some are easily avoided and some are less easily avoided. So I've dedicated a whole chapter to how to deal with if you do have somebody in your life who you feel you need to convince that this is the right option for you, of how to deal with that, because it is so important. It's just that they have fears, they have certain beliefs, they have certain expectations, And I think it's about having really honest conversations with your partner about where you want to go, why you want to go down a certain route, what compromises might have to be made, making a financial plan, which most people would rather not do. It's like the worst thing that you could ask them to do. But it's really vital if your career change is going to make a financial or have a financial impact on you and your family and people around you. So
Yeah.
it's important to have those conversations because we don't want anybody rowing
Mm.
over this. But it is
No,
it's
you'd have to write another book, wouldn't you, to help people get through their relationship crisis. Another book for another time. I
yes.
mean, I think listening to this session, it's always nice to hear some stories, isn't it, about people who have done this and who have made the change. And I wonder if you had one particular story. You've obviously spoken to a lot of people through your podcast, and it would be lovely to hear about someone that particularly resonated with you about a decision that they made to change and what they're doing now.
This is like asking me to choose between my children, which child do you love most? I mean, there are so many stories, and that's why I love my podcast so much, because I get to talk to such a wide variety of people who've made such sometimes huge career decisions that have taken them off on a completely different track. I had a guy who quit they were living in Holland, quit his job, and they moved to Bali, with their 2 kids in tow who were very tiny. And so it's not just a career change, it's a whole lifestyle change. He didn't even know what he wanted to do work-wise. So I love hearing stories like that where people have just gone, but this is it. I mean, he's a classic example of a leaper, right?
Yes,
Um,
very much so, in a big way.
yeah, in a big way. The guy that was working for Formula One, but had always wanted to roast coffee. And he's the perfect example of a parent saying to him, well, don't be silly. You've got a good career, you've got a stable job. People would kill to work in Formula One. Stick with what you've got, son. And it was only when he was, I think, in his 50s that he finally plucked up the courage to quit his job and start his coffee roasting business that he dreamt of for the last 20, 30 years. So I do love hearing that, because I think we all do have this dream inside of us, this little child that has always wanted to paint or perform, or like I talk about my dad in the book because he was a hotel manager all his life, but he's always been extremely creative. He used to paint when we were little. And then obviously, as his career got more and more demanding, he had less time to do creative stuff. And it was only when he semi-retired that he went to, in his mid-60s, he went on a course to do ceramics at his local, workshop or whatever it was. And he discovered in his mid-60s that he's really good at ceramics. So he's making the most incredible, creative pots and vases and plates. And I mean, very, very unusual stuff.
Yeah,
And he loves nothing more than to talk about ceramics now, but it's taken him 6.5 decades to discover that passion. And
yes.
he had his first exhibition at the age of 72. He hopefully won't mind me disclosing his age. And people were buying his art by the bucket load.
Wow.
And honestly, I've never seen, well, I have, but he's like lights up. He's so excited. He's so passionate about what he's doing. And I'm like, wow, why has it taken this long for him to find this passion? And that's why I love people taking time to go on different courses, go on workshops, explore the possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. What a lovely positive note, I guess, to finish on, because I'm conscious that we don't want to give too much away about the book, do we? Because we want people to read it. So let's just perhaps finish off with a question for you, Yesim, which is for anybody listening who's considering quitting their job, what's your one piece of advice?
My piece of advice is have a positive mindset about it. Don't approach it with fear. Let your faith be greater than your fear. That's it. It's really
Mm,
simple.
wonderful. Thank you. It's been great chatting to you.
Thank you. Thanks for grilling me. And hopefully it's given people a bit of an insight into what to expect from the book. I really loved writing it. I hope people find inspiration from it. I hope it opens up what might be possible for people. And helps people to feel less stuck in their situation.
Yeah. Well, good luck to you. It's a wonderful thing you're doing.
Thank
And
you. Thanks.
yeah, see you soon.
Thank you for your time.